Hello and welcome to episode 68 of the Ohio Huntsman podcast, and hopefully you guys had a great Thanksgiving with your family, and hopefully that was a good time for you guys, and just time to slow down and reflect on all the things that we're thankful for and just spend time with family. Now that we're into gun season, we thought it would be a good time to talk about deer drives. So you guys have heard us talk about deer drives in the past. We did an episode last year on like how to do a deer drive, right? This one is more on the ethics, if you will, or are deer drives safe, that kind of thing, and just a little bit different take on deer drives, right? You've heard we use deer drives. It's an effective tool to have in your hunting kit. As we said in the past episode, it takes a traditionally solitary activity, right? Whitetail hunting is you're typically by yourself unless you film your hunts or something, or you're taking a youth out and then you're with somebody else. But deer drives turn deer hunting into a group activity, and everybody goes home with deer. Everybody has a good time, and so we enjoy deer drives, especially during gun season. And it's just a way, especially coming out of Thanksgiving and spending time with family. Gun season for us is that deer camp atmosphere, right? Where buddies that you haven't seen, you might only see at deer camp. And so that's really what the week-long gun season is for us. It's a time to hang out with friends and family. We three brothers and our dad, and then we've got other buddies that we hunt with down at our cabin in Southeast Ohio. And deer drives are just part of it, right? And we really enjoy that. It's a way for all of us to kind of hunt together, and like I said, everybody goes home with deer. So that's what this episode's about. Another thing, we decided to extend our holiday sale to this coming Monday. So if you didn't get your shirts or decals, you can still do that. T-shirts are on sale for $14.99, normally $19.99. Decals are on sale for $4.95. So good prices on everything. We decided to extend that to this coming Monday. So you've got a few more days to get in on that if you're interested. Two ways you can find that stuff. Either go to ohiohuntsman.com/apparel. That'll take you to shirts and decals. The other way, if you're on Amazon shopping already, we sell our shirts through Amazon. Go on Amazon and just search Ohio Huntsman, and all of our shirt designs will come up. Either way you prefer works either way. Decals are only through our website, though. So if you're looking for decals, you have to go to ohiohuntsman.com. Now, I think those are all the announcement I have. So, before we get into today's episode, I want to talk about our sponsor, Monster Whitetail Grub. So, Monster Whitetail Grub is an Ohio deer feed company. They make great deer feed products. They've got their premium Monster Whitetail Grub feed, which is a high-protein feed. It's got mineral mixed in. The mineral is a nice additive because it keeps those deer coming back even after the physical feed is gone. They've also got flavored corn and just straight loose mineral. So whatever you're looking for, they've got it. They're an Ohio company, and they've been with us almost from the beginning. So we really appreciate them. And if you're looking for some feed, I encourage you to check out Monster Whitetail Grub. And with that, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Ohio Huntsman podcast, where three brothers, Jason, Jacob, and Jeff, discuss all things hunting in Ohio. Our goal is to be your source for accurate and reliable hunting news and conservation issues in the great state of Ohio, as well as some fun and interesting conversations along the way. This is the Ohio Huntsman podcast.
Are you listening?
All right, so today on the show, we are going to talk about a topic that can be a little contentious, and I guess we're going to get into the reasons why we think that might be, and that topic is deer drives, or pushing deer, or there's a lot of different names for it. Wind bumps, I've heard them called, but basically the idea is you're sort of artificially moving deer through the woods in an attempt to get them in front of a hunter to get a shot. Happens a lot during gun season. That's primarily when that goes on, but you can do it with archery equipment. You just have to kind of change the tactics up a little bit. We're not going to touch on tactics so much today. We did an episode on sort of how to do a deer drive, how to do it safely, how to do it effectively, things that you should be taking into consideration. That was way back, episode 14. So if you're interested in that, go back and listen to that episode. It's called What is a Deer Drive? And that's where we sort of covered deer drive tactics. Today, we want to talk about maybe why they get a bad rap, and just some of the legalities around them, some of the conversations around, are they sporting? Are they fair chase? That sort of thing. And see where the conversation takes us. This one is very unstructured. We have a topic that we want to talk about, but we don't really have a final destination in mind, if you will. So it's just going to be a conversation with the three of us, Jacob, Jeff, and I, and we'll see where it goes. So hopefully it's a useful and interesting conversation, and enjoyable. So with that, as I mentioned, right, deer drives are a way to move deer, get deer moving, right? They are great for that second half of gun season when the deer have been really pressured, and they're basically nocturnal by that point, right? If they don't have a reason to get up and move, there's a good chance they're not going to, especially, heavily pressured public ground, things like that. We use deer drives as a tactic. It's a legal means of pursuing deer. And like I said, you can do it with firearms. You can do it with archery equipment. Like I said, with archery stuff, it's everything's got to be a little slower, a little more methodical, because you can't have a deer running by you 100 miles an hour with a bow, right? That's not useful or helpful at all. So with that sort of groundwork laid, let's, I guess, get into some of the issues that people have. And this is by no means all inclusive. These are just things that people have sent us comments about, or questions about, or concerns, I guess, about regarding deer drives. So, as Jeff mentioned before we started recording, there seems to be deer drives seem to be affiliated with a lot of illegal activity, if you will, breaking the law, not following the rules, which rightfully so puts a bad taste in people's mouth regarding deer drives. So, Jeff, do you want to talk about some of the things that are associated with deer drives that maybe are off-putting to people in that regard?
Yeah. A lot of people, lump in the fact of people, not wearing proper blaze orange, or trespassing, or harvesting deer that they're not tagging in with deer drives. There is people who do that, who do deer drives and are not wearing enough blaze orange, and they're going through public lands, or they're doing a deer drive and they're swinging through other people's property that they don't have permission on. And that's where a lot, I think, of the bad rap of deer drives comes from. is there seems to be it's at least notable in media and in conversations on social media of these people doing deer drives and breaking laws while doing deer drives.
Right.
You seem to hear a lot of people, a lot of the stories, especially during gun season, is these people were doing a deer drive, game warden showed up and assessed all these tickets.
Yeah. And, that is obviously a case of, a small subset of people attempting to ruin it for everybody else, right? Like that would be a case much like the many or almost all of the hunting stories that make the news, right? It's somebody doing something stupid and the media says, oh, a hunter was caught shooting deer after dark, or, and it's like, that's not hunting. That's poaching, right? That's illegal. The vast majority of hunters, and I would venture to guess, I don't have stats on this, but the vast majority of people doing deer drives are doing everything by the books. They're following the law. Like I said, it's a legal means of pursuing deer, and they're following the rules. But you have these pockets or these subsets of people that put a bad taste in people's mouth. And I think the other area that potentially gives people or makes people not view deer drives in a favorable light is it's a good way to move deer around, and a lot of times it's a let's get meat in the freezer tactic. And so if you're a guy that's out hunting waiting for that one buck and people walk through, you have a group of guys come through doing a drive, that can be frustrating.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're in there, you think you're in the perfect spot, and all of a sudden here comes a bunch of people walking through the woods doing a deer drive. That's very much like, what the hell? On the other hand, though, there's a good chance that if you were in the right spot, they may have pushed the deer that you were after past you.
Right.
And so it can be beneficial, right? There's a tactic of hunting that is during gun season. You should sit through lunch because everybody's going to get up and get out of the woods to go eat lunch. And if you're still in the woods, those guys are going to push deer around as they're leaving the woods, and you'll have a deer walk by you. That's basically a deer drive, right? It's not organized, structured, right? But those guys are getting up, walking through the woods, which is pushing deer around artificially. And if you're in the right place, you get a shot that you wouldn't have otherwise got if everybody just would have sat there, because the deer are in the thick stuff laying there. They've got no reason to get up and move around. You're, on the perimeter of that, waiting to see a deer walk by, and they're just going to lay there all day. I mean, they obviously get up and kind of reposition, and they might move a couple yards or whatever, but you probably wouldn't see that deer until after dark when it gets up and says, okay, everything's safe. But you got guys leaving the woods for lunch and therefore pushing deer around. So I guess in that regard, I would encourage people to try to see it in another light, right? If these guys walk through and my target deer didn't come by, maybe he wasn't in there. And I would have been sitting here wasting my time all day.
Right. I would argue he wasn't in there. You know what I mean? I mean, yes, there are some situations. I mean, we've even had them when we were doing drives where the deer will hold very, very tight. And if you don't essentially step on them, they don't bust out of the thick stuff. But generally, if a deer drive is executed correctly, it gets all of the deer, or a large majority of them, up and moved out of that chunk of timber that they did the drive through.
Yeah.
So if, like you said, if your deer didn't come up or come by, you either weren't on the right trail, his exit trail, or he wasn't in there, and maybe it's time to go to your plan B of where you think he might be.
Right. Yeah. And the other nice thing, or I guess encouraging thing, I guess I've seen here recently, because, growing up watching hunting shows, I don't ever remember seeing or hearing about people doing drives in hunting media, right? But, you guys have heard us talk about the hunting public. They use deer drives. I think they call them a wind bump, right? Where they try to be smart about the way the wind's blowing and where they're going to set up in relation to that. And so they're intentionally blowing their scent into an area to try to push deer out the backside to get a shot. And then the meat eater, they just, I think it was Wyoming. They went on a guided hunt way back in the back country. They rode back in there on horseback and they talked about doing a deer drive on that hunt and getting a shot at a nice mule deer buck, or getting a nice mule deer buck. And so I don't know. I think they film everything they do, so it will probably show up on a TV show at some point. But yeah, I thought that was cool to hear, cool to see. I guess here it was on a podcast, so. But you're starting to see it in hunting media. You're starting to see it and or hear it in hunting media, which I think is cool because it's a tactic that we've used forever, and it's just cool to see it represented in some of that hunting media. Especially meat eater. That's a huge hunting outlet. So
yeah, I think a lot of the non-traditional hunting media, has started to pick up on deer drives and other sorts of I don't even know what to call them, non-stand hunting,
right?
Types of hunting, because I don't remember watching anyone ever stalk a whitetail deer either, growing up watching hunting TV shows.
Yeah.
But you go to YouTube, you can find people, spot a deer, 100 yards away and watch them crawl through a cornfield to get a shot.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you mention that, this is sort of a deer drive, I think, in a sense. Again, on Meat Eater, the episodes with Doug Duran, he's got a farm up in Wisconsin, and I think they call it a mooch. And it sounds a little different. I think the drivers, the guys that would typically be walking through the woods, I think the way they do it there, everything is much slower. Like the guy doing the mooch is almost still hunting through the woods. Like he's going real slow, but he's heading in a general direction toward another guy that's on stand. And, with the idea, if a deer jumps up and I can get a shot at it as I'm sneaking through the woods, great. If not, and it runs off, hopefully it runs by my buddy over there and he can get a shot. And so it's just another example of people doing drives legally, following all the rules, and it's an effective way to hunt deer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess thing, like we previously said, not to repeat it, but it's just there's such a bad image of it when really I think a lot of guys probably purposefully or non-purposefully, quote unquote, hunt deer that are driven or drive deer. You know what I mean? Like technically, if you're still hunting through the woods, you're driving deer.
Right.
You're walking through the woods, whether you're doing it fast or slow, your presence will get deer to change from their natural patterns from what they would be if you weren't there at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's different levels of it, obviously, and everyone assumes deer drive, and they think of the Orange Army, 30 guys in blaze orange, holding hands, walking through the woods.
Right.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what
and
I mean?
also-
that's not what it is 99% of the time.
Yeah, there's also a lot of historic negative connotation to deer drives, because when they were eradicating animals, that's basically what they were doing, like the great Christmas Day Hinckley hunt. They, basically everyone started from their farm and walked to the town center and just shot anything they saw. Everybody was pushing animals around, and they just shot everything they saw so that the animals would stop eating their crops. So, they shot hundreds of deer and black bear and any other animal they saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't
so
know
it's-
that. That's
Yeah.
Hinckley, Ohio. You're talking?
Yeah, Hinckley, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
That's the wise tale of why the whole buzzard roost thing, like that the buzzards came in the spring after the
Oh.
Hinckley hunt to eat on all the gut piles and, discarded animals, once they thawed, and ever since they've been coming back.
Okay.
That's
So
wise tale or the tall tale about it.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know or you're unfamiliar with Hinckley, that there's a it's a pretty small town, but they're known the Hinckley Buzzards, right? They are known. There's festivals, the Buzzard Festival. It's a big deal in Hinckley associated with buzzards, and I never knew. I guess I never took the time to look into why, but that's an interesting tidbit. You can Google it, of course, Hinckley, Ohio buzzards, and you'll find all kinds of stuff, but that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, if you get anything out of this, you learn something there, hopefully.
Yeah. But yeah, deer driving in general kind of gets a negative connotation from those kinds of hunts where it was, the intention wasn't to get meat, it was to eradicate, wildlife.
So I guess let's kind of continue on the negative connotation, right? Because there's another, Jacob, you alluded to it, like the 30 guys coming through the woods, and we've had people reach out to us about that, saying, oh, I think they should make deer drives illegal. And some of that sentiment comes from, not that we've seen it personally, but we've heard from listeners that you'll have very large groups of Amish come through the woods, huge groups, and sort of like this Hinckley hunt, right? They're not shooting every species, but every deer, right? If they have a chance. And I don't know what to say about that, right? If they are all wearing orange, if they all have a hunting license, if they all have a deer tag, if they are all following the laws, which we've heard they're not, but we're not speaking firsthand experiences here, so I don't want to go too far down that road.
And I think a lot of that's, hearsay, just them getting a bad rap because they're different. People like to pick on the guy who's different. Right.
Or you hear from somebody one time that, and then that's the way all Amish are, and, I don't know. If they are following the law, then, they are...
more power to them,
Right. They're entitled to do that, and while it can be frustrating, if you're in there hunting and they come through, it's no different than a non-Amish guy walking past your stand or setting up in a tree 40 yards from you, or that's frustrating too, but he's entitled to do that, and and they're entitled to, again, if they're following all the rules, they're not trespassing, all of that. I want to pause here for a quick second and talk about our sponsor, Mastin's Deer Scents. So Mastin's is what I consider a premium scent product company. They collect all of their scent on stainless steel, so you don't get any off scents or any contamination in there. Everything's clean and fresh. The other really nice thing about them is they've sort of mixed things up in the scent category. They don't, it's not just your liquid scents. They of course have that, and they've got a lot of good options there, but they've got different ways of dispersing that scent. So they've got their double scent stack, which allows you to run 2 scents at once. So you would get a deer scented or like an apple scented candle, and then it heats a liquid scent in a tray above the candle. So you can layer scents, which is really cool. They've also got scented gel crystals, which you can refresh with liquid scent. If they, if the scent starts to dissipate, you can refresh those. And the other nice thing is if you like scent drippers, their scent bottles go right into their scent dripper bag. So there's no pouring liquids or anything like that. You just take the bottle, screw the dripper tip on, and you're good to go. So if you like scent, if you like using scent as a hunting tool or as a way to get deer in front of your cameras, whatever you're looking for, I encourage you to check out Mastin's Deer Scents. There'll be a link in the show notes on how to get in touch with them. You just go to their website, mastinsdeerscents.com, order right from their website, and they ship it straight to your house. And with that, let's get back into the episode.
I also think those large driving parties, whether they're Amish, black, white, purple, women, kids, whatever, would actually be better off to split up. So them being in a large party is actually probably better off for everyone else, because if they split into smaller groups, they would probably be more productive.
Yeah.
Because it only takes so many guys to get the deer moving, and it only takes so many guys to shoot deer, and there's only so many deer in a chunk of woods.
Yeah.
So if they were splitting up, they would probably be more successful. So while it sucks if you're the guy in that chunk of woods, it's probably better for the guy in, the other chunk of woods, because they probably had enough people to drive, 5 or 6 chunks of woods, but they all went into yours, one, and used their time there.
Yeah, so what you're saying, like in some of maybe the adjoining pieces of property, the deer that scored out, like if you happen to be sitting in one of those pieces where they didn't come through, you may have a great day in the woods, right? You're going to see, there's a chance for you to see a lot of deer. Whereas if you're in the block of woods that they're coming through, they crammed 30 guys into this one chunk of woods, it's not good for you. It's a little bit unsafe, but that's why we always encourage wear more orange than you think you need, man. You have a hat, have a full orange jacket, the more orange the better, because there's people in the woods with guns and you want to be seen. And so that would be my only complaint with those large groups is I would think it could be very easy to, when the shooting starts, the deer are up and moving, it's real easy to swing past a guy and, be sending bullets in unsafe directions.
Yeah. Well, you touched on another thing that, why deer drives get a bad rap is that a lot of people say that deer drives are unsafe. But I can't think of a case in Ohio where someone got shot on a deer drive. There's very few cases where people have gotten shot. Unfortunately, the past 2 seasons, there's been one fatality each year.
Right.
But those weren't deer drives. And actually, in both those cases, I believe there was illegal hunting going on. The one guy was ineligible to possess a firearm, and the other one, those guys were hunting, with firearms in closed season.
Oh, okay.
So there hasn't been a hunting accident during gun season for a while where anyone who's actually following all the laws, was either the shooter or was shot, because I believe, the one guy was ineligible, he was a felon or whatever and couldn't possess a firearm. And he shot a guy who was following all the laws. And then the other one, I think both those guys were hunting in closed season.
Okay.
So, but that's another thing where deer drives get a bad rap. And I think if everyone keeps their head on straight, and orange is your friend at all times during gun season. Actually, really, at all times during hunting, orange is your friend most of the time, because I want people to see me. I don't want people slinging an arrow in the brush and thinking, because they think I'm a deer.
Right.
So, but if everyone keeps their head on straight and is wearing orange, it can be done very safely.
Yeah.
Well, and also, typically, at least speaking from our experience, when we do deer drives, it's very structured, and where everybody's at.
Right.
You talk beforehand, you say, we've been doing these drives down, at our hunting cabin for a long time. So, but it's like, where each person who's walking, where they're going to come through, and, as soon as they're going to come through the middle of this hollow, or they're going to be coming down the right face of this hollow. So, that's off limits.
Right.
You got to wait for the deer to cross the hollow. And it's just, so if all that information, because you're all hunting, quote unquote, as a group doing a drive, hey, Jason's over in the hollow on my left. Jeff's on the face in the same hollow as me. So I know where the three standers are. And I know the drivers are going to be walking whatever it is, along the ridges, down the gut, whatever. Where your quote unquote dead zones are, where you can't shoot.
Right.
Right.
And I know personally, when I'm on stand, I pick it out. It's like, okay, this tree here is where I stop, and then I can pick up again at this tree. So that if it's, if you got a big old buck in your scope and you're trying to track him, you're going, you see the tree that you can't go past. It's like, all right, finger off, nowhere near it. Okay, now I'm back in the game. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you plan all that out, and it is structured, and it's like you said, it's extremely safe. It's safer, I would argue, than not everyone hunting on their own, or, hunting public land. You don't know where everyone else is set up.
Right.
So I might not be able to see you because there's a thick bottom, and you're hunting on the far side of that thicket, hoping to catch bucks coming from one ridge to the other. I can't see you, even if you're wearing orange head to toe. But I see a buck go down into that thicket, and it's the biggest buck I've ever seen, and I decide, well, I got a 450 Bushmaster. I'm going to throw a round at it. And it blows right through that thicket, and now you're in trouble.
Right. Yeah, so, that goes, and probably more likely is there's a guy down there that's just wearing a little plastic vest, the minimum required orange, and
right.
You'd have a hard time seeing him even if you were looking for him. And so it goes back to, in that regard.
Even if it's the guy shoots a deer and it runs into that thicket. Now he's in there trying to dig his deer out.
Right.
And I see another buck or a deer running towards that thicket. I don't know that guy's in there if you're not hunting together. So, the risk is, it's real. The people got guns, and you can't recall bullets.
Yep.
So that's why we're such big advocates of like wearing orange. If you're going to be gutting a deer, sometimes people like to take their jacket off because it's hot. They're hot. They're dragging a deer. Keep the orange on or hang the orange up in a tree so everybody can see it. You know what I mean? Like let everybody know.
Yep. Yeah. I like to wear layers of orange during gun season for that reason, right? Like I don't want to get my jacket all bloody or whatever. I'm going to take my jacket off and I still then have blaze orange on underneath. That way, I'm visible, because I'm standing there over top of a deer, right? If I'm wearing camo under all of that, somebody might, pop up over a hill and see, there's a bedded deer down there, and they start shooting and I'm standing, they got tunnel vision, right? They see the deer, they start shooting at the deer and I'm standing right there, right? So I like to have layers of orange on, and I always have an orange hat. I'm not going to take my hat off to work on a deer, right? So an orange hat at the very least, if, in that scenario would hopefully let somebody see you. But where was I going to go? I had a thought I was going with, and then now I've lost it. I guess just using deer drives safely and effectively. If you haven't tried one, and we talked about this, I know we talked about this in the episode 14, but if you haven't tried one, you might give it a try this year. It's, like I said, it's a very effective way to fill the freezer, and it takes a normally solitary act, right? You're going out by yourself, sitting in a stand by yourself and hunting, and it turns it into a group activity. So you got 4 or 5 guys, maybe you don't shoot 4 or 5 deer, that's okay. The 1 or 2 that you do get, you divvy those up between the guys, and everybody goes home with some deer meat. Whoever shoots the deer obviously checks it, but then you spread the wealth, right? And so it's a great way to get deer meat for a group of people, and they can just be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so, that's definitely like when we do it down south, it's it's like you said, it's a way to fill the freezer. So, like I've got my buck this year. I got deer meat. I've gotten a few does. So I don't necessarily need more deer meat, but I'm going to have tags in my pocket, and we're still going to do deer drives. And if I'm fortunate enough to shoot a deer, there'll be guys down there that are more than happy to take it. You know what I mean? We're not wasting anything.
Right.
As long as you keep it all legal, the guy who shoots the deer tags the deer. After that, you can give your deer to whomever. Even if you're someone who, even if everyone in your party has deer, most of your processors have a Feed the Hungry program.
Yep.
Where, you know what I mean? It's a lot of fun. Like you said, it makes it a group act, especially if it's like, we do it during a muzzleloader when it's freezing cold. It's a good way to, it makes it more enjoyable instead of sitting out there and just freezing and maybe seeing a deer.
Right.
It's a way to be mobile and walking, and, there's just nothing. It's just, if you've never done it, there's nothing better. It's just a feeling, there's nothing better than when you're doing a deer drive and the guns start going off.
Yeah.
Everybody's working together. You're proud. You're happy. It's like, yes, this is working. This is cool.
It turns it into a team sport. You're a team instead of an individual.
Right.
And also, deer drives can be a really good opportunity to introduce young hunters who have short attention spans, to hunting.
That's a great point.
As long as, because it was a long time before I was allowed to do a deer drive, on my own, like be by myself. But from pretty young, I was doing deer drives, and Dad or another adult would be with me, and I would walk with them, or I would stand, with another adult. And, it's a heck of a lot more interesting for a young kid with a short attention span.
Right, because you're sitting there for, a half hour or something. You've got that experienced hunter there with you, sort of mentoring you through the process, saying this is where their deer are probably going to come from. These are your safe shooting directions. And it keeps everything safe. It's a good opportunity for that one-on-one coaching in a lot of different scenarios, right? Over, if you do a couple of these in a day, right? You've got a lot of different scenarios of, okay, now this is how this block of woods or this hollow lays out. The drivers are going to come from this direction. The deer are probably going to run through here. And it's a great way to kind of coach and mentor a young hunter and get them, like you said, get them exposed to hunting, teach them how to do it safely, and keep them interested because, if you're a stander, you're going to set up and, you're maybe there for half hour, 45 minutes, hour tops. And yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
So anything else we want to touch on deer drives?
Well, I kind of wanted to go a little further into, I don't know, sort of the ethics of it and like,
Sure.
Is it sporting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you have to draw the line somewhere. There has to be a line drawn in the sand of somewhere where like this is legal and sporting and that's illegal and not sporting. And our state has chosen to allow deer drives. Some others don't. Some states allow high-powered rifles. Some states allow you to drive deer with dogs.
Right.
So there's states that are more generous or allow you to do more, and there's some states that allow you to do less.
Some states allow party hunting.
Right. Some states allow party hunting. So there's a line. A line's got to be drawn in the sand somewhere. You have to draw a line somewhere to provide good hunting opportunities to everyone who wants to be out there. Yep. And to protect the game animals. Well, protect all animals. And I'm fine with the way, because I've grown up here and I've grown up doing deer drives, where our line is, I think's pretty good. Because allowing dogs, because it's not legal in our state, all I hear about is the negatives. Where, if you do deer drives with dogs don't, dogs never quit and they'll run a deer to death or, but I don't know if it's also a slippery slope when we start taking hunting opportunities away from people. If you take this hunting opportunity away, well, now we can chip away at the next opportunity. It's, oh, well, no, now there's not deer drives. Well, now let's not allow people to use tree stands, because that's an unfair advantage. And then how about not guns, just bows, and then it's not crossbows, and it's not compound bows, and then eventually we're having to try to kill deer with spears.
Yeah.
So I feel like you got to draw a line somewhere, and I'm pretty satisfied with where our line's drawn.
Well, and again, I guess we can only speak for the type of deer drives we do, which is a small group of people. I don't know that I've ever been in a drive with 10 guys. It's typically 5, 6, somewhere less, maybe 10 guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say 10's probably about the largest.
Our max, that we've ever really done.
Right, but those 10 guys were probably driving, I don't know, at least 150 acres total. I don't know. It's probably we're not packed in tight.
No, yeah.
No.
But I guess where I was going with that is, we're talking about, is it is it sporting, right? So given what you guys have seen, and I guess our opinion is a little biased, but do you consider it sporting, or is it too effective? Can you shoot every deer in that block of woods doing a deer drive?
I mean, the way that we do deer drives, which is all I really can base off of, because that's the only people I've driven deer with, I promise you it's not too effective, because we do deer drives and don't get deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's still deer down there, and we've been doing deer drives down there forever. And
so is everybody else.
And so is everybody else. And it's the same deer drives. You know what I mean? Like, the deer have ways out the way we do it. You know what I mean? We're not, like I said, you can't even, when you're a driver, you typically can't even see the other driver in some situations. Sometimes you can see them, but they're way across the hollow.
Yeah.
But the idea is the way we do drives is cover as much land as possible, but also be close enough that we're going to actually get the deer up.
Right, and be far enough apart that it's safe, right? You don't want to be on top of each other to where, you're both shooting at the same deer at the same time, or, if you're spread out, right, it keeps things a little safer.
Right. So basing on that, absolutely, deer drives they are effective, but they're not overly effective. I think they're ethical. I don't think there's any, maybe if you're talking, like I said, 30 guys pushing through 40 acres where you literally could touch the guy next to you. I don't know. Maybe that's flirting with unethical, but at the same time, you know what I mean? If you're not, like Jeff said, you're not covering that much land. So, yes, that 40 acres will probably be vacant of deer by the time it's over, but I don't know that, you know what I mean? It's not gonna, I don't think you're going to wipe out the population of deer, whitetail deer in Ohio by doing deer drives.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not going to happen.
As long as everyone's following regulations, as long as there are regulations on harvest and people are following those regulations.
Right. Because, at the end of the day, the law in Ohio is like, there is no party hunting in Ohio. So to do a deer drive, like, you have to have a tag in your pocket to shoot a deer. So in the sense of, like, we're going to put one guy up on this pinch point and he's going to shoot the 10 deer that come pouring out of here, he legally can't do that.
Right.
We might want to explain what party hunting is. People might not know exactly what that means.
Yeah, so party hunting is, and I don't know, it might be called other things in other states, but I've heard it generally referred to as party hunting, in that as long as somebody in your group has a tag, you don't have to be the one to shoot the deer, right? So if 3 of us walk through the woods and I shoot 2 deer and I only have 1 tag, but my buddy has a tag, we're still legal party in a state that allows party hunting. As long as there are enough tags in your group of guys to cover the deer that are harvested, you're good to go. And I don't know the exact wording of the laws, but that's generally, I don't know, would you guys describe it any differently?
No, that's generally the idea. As long as there is someone in the group has a tag for the animal, anyone in the group can harvest that animal, and the other person can tag it with their tag.
Right. So I would venture to guess that the reason they don't allow that in Ohio, but do allow deer drives, maybe that's a way to control that kind of over harvest in a single drive. Maybe I that's obviously speculation. I have no clue, but it seems like a good way. But then I don't know, because then I know Iowa allows party hunting, right? Iowa is the land, the land of giants, right? It's big giant bucks everywhere, or so you're led to believe, and they allow party hunting, and the hunting public does deer drives in Iowa So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Iowa has a lot more strict bag limits, though, right?
I think you have like the way you buy a tag and it's good for any season. I think Iowa, you've got like a tag for an archery tag, or you've got a shotgun tag, or you've got a primitive weapons tag. I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it is.
Yeah, and I thought, that you can't get a ton of, you can't shoot all of your deer in gun season.
Right.
Like you can't get that many tags. But I'm not an Iowa expert, so don't quote me.
Yep. And I could make the argument that deer drives are a way to sell, and probably do sell, more licenses and tags, right? Because if it's a tradition, sort of like the Thanksgiving rabbit hunt, right? Like it's a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're all going to go out Saturday of gun season and spend the day doing deer drives. You might not have the time, care to whatever. You're not a diehard deer hunter, but the camaraderie, hey, let's all go out and have some fun and see if we can get a couple deer. In order to do that, as long as everything is legal, you got to buy a license and a tag.
Yeah.
And that might be the only reason that you go buy a license and tag. But that money's going into the same pot of conservation funds as the diehard deer hunter's license and tag purchase is. Right.
Yeah. And I am an example of that because, we typically do a deer drive, a muzzleloader deer drive, during muzzleloader season at our grandpa's farm. And my wife typically only hunts on our property, so she doesn't need to buy a tag. But if she wants to do that hunt, she has to buy a tag, and typically we're not very successful out there. So typically that tag, the odds of that tag being filled are slim. Right. Where the rest of us, we're using our leftover tags, basically. She's specifically buying a tag for that one half a day of hunting.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, the same goes for down at the cabin, I mean, I typically hunt gun season Monday through half the day Wednesday, and inevitably on the last drive on Tuesday night, I shoot a deer and use my tag, and then I have to buy another one so I can go out Wednesday morning and do deer drives. You know what I mean? So now I have this tag that sometimes I fill during muzzleloader, sometimes I don't. But I purchase another tag because that's just, I'm down here to hunt deer. I'm down here to do deer drives and participate with everybody else. And I'm not going to, if you're the guy who after you get your deer, you go home, you don't come back.
Right.
That's just
you don't get invited back, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. We don't, that's just not how it works down there. We're hunting the hills, and the way we hunt is we do still hunting on Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and throughout the rest of the week, it's basically deer drives for the most part. And if that's not how you hunt, you either make that known up front and you go on and do your own thing, or, if you're going to be part of the group, then you're part of the group. And that means we need you to, if you've got your deer, then maybe you be a driver, which some say you have a less chance of shooting a deer. But on a lot of our deer drives, I know, Jason, you always have luck as a driver.
Yeah.
Shooting deer. So
the problem is when you shoot them at the beginning of the drive, and then you got this dilemma, like, do I drag this thing all the way through? Do I leave it here and come back? It's quite a conundrum.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, that's right. Good problem to have. So I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I unless you guys had something else you wanted to touch on, but
well, I'll go into the controversial topic. I'm gonna hit the controversial one here.
I thought these have all been controversial.
Oh no, this one, I think this one will get people hot.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think if we're talking about hunting being too effective, or doing hunting, deer hunting being too effective, I would say the first place you would need to look is at hunting during rut season, during the rut, because that gives the hunters a pretty big advantage on bucks, because you're hunting bucks that have less care about humans and are moving in ways that are not typical. And a lot of times, deer that are being pushed in a deer drive, they know what's going on. They have a fear of humans. They know what's going on. They know they're fearful.
I got to get out of here.
Yeah. Where a rutting buck will, it'll see you, it may smell you, but he's so worried about finding does that I'm not worried about that guy. This past weekend, I had does walk on a trail, and as soon as they got downwind of me, they smelled me, started stomping, and even though they couldn't find me in the tree, they turned around and got out of there. Had a buck come, same trail, walk downwind of me there, had no problem, and ended up walking, 20 yards from me, where he would have never done that had he not been looking for does.
Yeah.
It was almost unfair. I'm one to take any opportunity I can get. I was thankful. I'm thankful for the rut, but if you want to talk about things being less sporting, you might want to go there.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely, and that's why people like to hunt the rut, right? The deer, especially the bucks, are at a steep disadvantage during that time of year. They are, arguably careless when it comes to that time of year when things are hot and heavy. And I think the counter argument to your point is that that's natural, right? I've often referred to the rut as Mother Nature's deer drive, because deer are, if you go back a couple episodes where we talked about our bow weekend, right? That was the first weekend in November. Things are starting to ramp up, and I was sitting there with my bow, and all of a sudden I hear a bunch of deer coming like it was a deer drive, right? It's the same thing. I just hear deer running through the woods, and it was a little buck, a little 4-point or something, was pushing 4 does around, and it was crazy. There's deer everywhere. They're oh my gosh, they're and it's like they're everywhere. And that was, Mother Nature's deer drive, the rut. We should make T-shirts that say that.
There you go. Look for them in the merch shop.
Yeah. Would you guys let us know. Would you buy a shirt that says, I don't know, something, the rut, Mother Nature's deer drive? We might make them anyway, even if you're not going to buy them, because I kind of want one.
Yeah, there you go. And Jeff, to kind of another food for thought thing, I guess, if you want to talk about being too effective or the, efficacy being too good for hunting. I mean, the first place that I go to with that is baiting or corn piles. I mean, Ohio allows them, which I personally take advantage of. I'm not above that. I'm not saying don't hunt over corn piles, but talk about effective, especially early season. I mean, that you could set your watch to deer coming into a pile of corn and even beyond that, if you have a timed feeder that only throws corn at certain times, I mean, you can get pretty pretty big deer coming in on a pattern and adjust their pattern. Granted, you can argue that's their natural pattern, but would they be coming there at 6:00 p.m. every night if you didn't have a pile of corn there?
Yeah, I would argue that they're not going to be coming to that exact spot every night.
Right. So, I mean, you can go as high level or dig in as deep as you want, but I don't think that, I mean, honestly, deer drives are not the issue with the deer population in Ohio. I promise you that. And not that there is an issue. I'm not even saying there is, but guys thinking, oh, there's no deer because these guys are driving them all and shooting them all. I mean, I can vouch for it personally. I mean, I put a pile of corn out on my property, and one evening, my neighbor, who also hunts my property, saw 21 different deer. Yeah. You know what I mean? He chooses. His family doesn't eat venison, so he only shoots bucks and waits for big ones. So he hasn't even harvested a deer this year. But you know what I mean? That you can bring a lot of deer in if you're putting a pile of corn on the ground, and that is not natural. You know what I mean? If there wasn't a pile of corn, he would not have saw 21 deer.
Now, I will say that deer drives can affect your buck population, right? Because if you're using deer drives to put meat in the freezer and you're shooting any deer that runs by, there's a good chance that you're not going to have a lot of the big mature bucks because they're not going to make it that long, right? I mean, we don't see a ton of big bucks down at our cabin, and I would argue that has to do with the fact that everybody down there and around there does deer drives. We do deer drives, and it's very much about getting deer meat in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that you have to do deer drive. There's nothing wrong with only shooting does on a deer drive, and you're gonna let the bucks go by.
I have a little bit of a different philosophy on this one.
Okay.
I think that the large bucks, the big bucks, are still there, but because we're doing deer drives, the big bucks are too smart to get caught up in the deer drives. They've done it before, and they know where the back door is, and they get out. The big bucks, bucks are there. They just don't get caught up in the deer drives. They're too smart.
That could be.
Because think about the large bucks we've shot during rut weekend, and you never see deer like that doing deer drives. I mean, a lot less. We don't bow hunt a ton down there.
No.
And we tend to get some nice bucks.
You're talking 2-3 days a year we hunt down at the cabin with archery tackle.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say during that 2 to 3 days, at least one of us lays eyes on what for down there would be considered a big buck.
Yeah.
Right. Doing deer drives, we never really see big bucks.
That's a good point. We almost never shoot bucks on deer drives.
Last year was a big year for bucks because Jason, your brother-in-law, shot a
nice one. Yep.
And then my buck last year I shot was on a deer drive, and would have been nice if it would have got older. I mean, it was I think it was technically a 9-point, but it was nothing. They were all very small.
Right.
But yeah, typically you're right. It's all does. We don't see much in the way of bucks.
Yeah.
They used to. The old guys will talk, and they would talk about, if you read the old stories they write in the journals, it's, so-and-so got a 10-point on this drive or whatever, but you don't typically, and you would figure the odds or the logistics of it with how many drives we do and the areas, there's bucks in there. You know what I mean? When we're doing the drives, you see buck sign.
Yeah.
But you never actually see the bucks. Typically. I mean, but that's for another topic because us young guns have been talking about changing up how we do the drives down there for a long time.
Yeah.
So
maybe now that's a good place to end it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think at least my closing thought is sort of don't throw rocks at the way someone else hunts until you take a deep dive and look at the way you hunt, and whether what you're doing is anything better or worse. I think there's an argument for just about every tactic saying that tactic is unfair or too effective,
Yeah.
And I think we kind of, as hunters, need to stick together. Whatever makes you happy in hunting, you do that, and I'll do what I like to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think my closing thought would be don't knock it till you try it. Right? If you've never done one, it's kind of hard to comment, and you've only seen or, heard through the grapevine that, oh yeah, geez, there's 50 guys come through try it and see if you don't have fun. Jake, any closing thought you want to leave the listeners with on this one?
No, I think you guys pretty much covered it. It's, like you said, don't knock it till you try it. It's a lot of fun. It makes a individual sport, a team sport, as Jeff said. I mean, it's a good way to put venison in the freezer. You know what I mean? And like you said, you can align whatever rules, quote unquote, you want for your drives. If you don't want to shoot yearlings on your drives, don't shoot yearlings.
Right. Sort of self-enforced. Yeah.
Right. If you don't want to shoot bucks, don't shoot bucks. Or if you don't want to, you know what I mean? I mean, you don't have a whole lot of time on deer drives to analyze your bucks to determine, I don't want to shoot anything under 3 years old or whatever. But that's all up to the individual hunter.
Well, and if that's the tactic you want to use, you can modify like the way we do deer drives, right? That you don't have a lot of time. But if you wanted to do more of like a mooch, right? Like we talked about earlier, where you're just real slowly pushing through and they're not going to come running through real quick, you can make it whatever you want it to be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much my closing thought, I guess, would be don't assume that a deer drive is 30 guys holding hands, pushing everything. You know what I mean? Because that's such a small amount of what actually is happening.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a reason why, guys like to do rabbit hunts on Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? It's just the camaraderie. It's a lot of fun. Everybody has more fun when people are shooting deer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus I'm willing to bet that if we went down for our gun season and didn't do deer drives, we might, out of just whatever, 6 guys say that are at the cabin, we might get 1 deer a day versus, we drive deer Tuesday, Wednesday, and, we're typically getting at least 4, you know what I mean? Like for the day or whatever. So it just, on those early days, when everyone has their tags, just makes it a lot more fun. It makes the evening more fun because there's, more stories to tell. There's deer to be processed.
Yeah, you make these sound a lot more effective than I remember.
That's what I was thinking. I'm thinking we do days where we get 1.
Yeah, or 0.
Yeah.
We hunt sun up to sundown and don't get anything.
I'm going off the last 2 years, which have been better years. Prior to the last 2 years, we had some trouble down there. That's for sure. There was days where we didn't get any. That is very true.
I would definitely say, we're not averaging 4 deer a day, or at least 4, or whatever you said. That felt like an overstatement to me.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think last year we shot 5 in a day, and like were going crazy. Like, can you believe we got 5? Like, this was, a day to remember.
That may be accurate. I don't know. I might have some blurred memories.
You just got high hopes.
Yeah, I remember last year was a good year. I'm going off.
It was a good year, yeah.
We had a good year down there last year. So, but
all right.
And then when we were kids, there was a lot bigger group of guys. But when we had, 10 guys doing drives, we had drives where we would get 3 on a drive. But that was years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think that's a good place to end it. Like I said, this, we didn't have a real structured outline for how we wanted this to go. We just wanted to have a conversation about deer drives in general and maybe some of the complaints people have about them. And so hopefully this was enlightening. Hopefully, it maybe gets you thinking. And maybe you try doing a deer drive this year. And I think with that, going to go eat some dinner. And thanks for listening. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Like I said, hopefully you're having a good season. Hopefully you all are staying safe. And hopefully you are enjoying this time, right? I mean, we've only got so many deer seasons left on this planet, right? And so I really encourage people to just enjoy this time, right? Don't get too stressed out about shooting a big giant buck. If that's your thing, that's all good. If that's what you enjoy, if that's what makes your heart happy, that's great. But don't get too caught up in that, right? Enjoy the time with friends and family at deer camp, around the campfire, whatever, around the dinner table in the evenings, and just have fun. Like I said, still a little bit of time to get in on our merch sale. If you want that stuff, like I said, we're going to run it through Monday. And as always, we really appreciate you guys listening, sharing our stuff, and interacting with us on social. So if you're not familiar, Ohio Huntsman on Facebook, Ohio Huntsman _podcast on Instagram, and we're always trying to post things on there to keep you guys informed on what's going on with hunting in Ohio and just interesting things we find around the interwebs. So with that, enjoy, have fun. Hopefully you've been having some success during gun season, and we'll talk to you next week.